Today, I will tell you a captivating love story, with the main character being William Miller. The story begins at dawn one day when a milky white flying saucer landed on Lion Mountain, Pagoda Lone Village, south of City A. The flying saucer emitted colorful flashing lights, making everything around dazzling and blinding. When the door of the saucer opened, a tall, muscular young man appeared. He was William Miller, who swiftly landed on the ground like an eagle. However, once steady, he felt his body tremble slightly, seemingly unaccustomed to Earth's climate. The mountain breeze made him shiver, like a duck afraid of the cold. After the saucer disappeared into the sky, William began descending the mountain, heading towards the village at the foot of Lion Mountain. When he arrived, the lights in the village had lit up like stars in the sky but gradually turned off one by one. At the foot of the mountain, the village was lively with the sounds of roosters crowing, cows mooing, goats bleating, and dogs barking, blending into a vibrant symphony. As William reached the village entrance, he suddenly stopped, stunned by the sight before him. The village where he had grown up had changed drastically. The rough dirt roads were gone, replaced by straight concrete paths. The houses were newly built, multi-storied, and modern, resembling a beautiful painting of a new countryside. Nostalgia and surprise surged within William. He recalled his winter break before heading to the city for university, memories of his childhood friend Rose Miles, for whom he had feelings since they were young. Now, the image of the runny-nosed little girl had vanished, replaced by a beautiful young woman as radiant as a flower. William stepped into his house, but the atmosphere inside was gloomy and damp. He sensed the emptiness, as if the home had been uninhabited for a long time. Cobwebs covered his face and clothes. Anxious and uneasy, he searched for his parents but found only peeling walls and dust. In a panic, William sat down on the floor and cried out loud. He felt as though fate was mocking him. Everything around had changed, yet he couldn't find his parents. Memories of his childhood and his first love with Rose Miles swirled in his mind. William Miller fell into despair and anguish when he couldn't find his parents. His heart felt heavy, wanting to cry but unable to. In his desperation, he softly called out for his parents, only to be met with an eerie silence. While searching through the familiar house, his eyes stopped at the main wall, where two framed photographs with black mourning ribbons of his parents hung. Seeing this, he was shocked and overwhelmed with pain. He knelt before the photographs, crying silently, tears falling like shattered petals of magnolia. After fainting for a while, he woke up and continued to cry, bowing 3 times before the images as a sign of respect. Time passed, and his emotions gradually calmed, but sudden hunger struck. Realizing his stomach was empty, he decided to fetch water and find food. In the kitchen, he opened the water jar lid to find it dry and empty. Feeling hopeless, he resolved to draw water from the well 20 steps away. However, when he opened the rice jar, it was empty, with holes gnawed by rats. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice, resembling his mother's. William Miller was overjoyed yet confused, uncertain if it was real. When he called out, a woman appeared. It was Aunt Miles, someone he cherished deeply. Aunt Miles was overjoyed to see him return but couldn't hold back her tears. William Miller, emotional, wanted to embrace Aunt Miles but couldn't. He felt distressed and at a loss for words. Aunt Miles comforted him and led him inside, urging him to eat first. Feeling hungry, William drank water like a parched man. When Aunt Miles brought out food, William ate ravenously, as if he hadn't eaten in ages. Aunt Miles inquired about his absence, and William was startled to hear her mention how long he had been gone. He tried to explain but felt dizzy upon realizing the truth about his disappearance and his parents' deaths. Aunt Miles, worried about his state, mentioned his parents' sorrow over his disappearance. William felt a surge of guilt and decided to lie, saying he had been wandering abroad. William Miller experienced a heartbreaking moment, feeling a lump in his throat and wanting to cry out loud but instead suppressing his sobs into muffled cries. Eleanor Miles, after calming down, thanked William for returning and suggested taking him to visit his parents' graves so he could tell them he was back. William agreed, touched by her thoughtfulness. Eleanor Miles seriously reminded him not to speak negatively as he had done before, as others might mock him. William understood and acknowledged the truth in her words. Eleanor Miles displayed motherly affection, affirming that no matter what he had done abroad, she would still treat him kindly. Afterward, William went to bathe. and fell asleep on the bed Eleanor Miles had prepared. He slept soundly until the evening but was awakened by a mosquito bite. Looking around, he realized it was already dark and decided to continue sleeping. During his slumber, a bright light from the bathroom pulled him out of his dream. Curious about who was bathing, he had no intention of peeking. However, upon glimpsing the alluring figure of the woman inside, he felt guilty yet unable to resist the attraction. When the bathroom light went out, he assumed Eleanor Miles would go upstairs to rest. Unexpectedly, he heard noises and felt as though she was entering his room. William Miller grew anxious and decided to feign sleep. Suddenly, Eleanor Miles pulled his blanket and climbed in, causing both of them to scream in shock. When the light came on, William realized the person beside him wasn't Eleanor Miles but a beautiful young woman. Both were astonished to recognize each other, William Miller and Rose Miles, his childhood friend. Joy overwhelmed them as they reunited after so long. William Miller returned to his hometown and met Rose Miles, his childhood friend who had now blossomed into a stunning beauty. He was thrilled by her charm but dared not harbor any intentions. After her bath, Rose Miles was only wearing underwear and was seen by William Miller, which enraged her, leading her to slap him. Despite being hit, William regretted not savoring the moment. When Rose Miles asked what he was doing, William fabricated an excuse about killing a mosquito. She then angrily hit him with a pillow. Eleanor Miles, Rose's mother, returned and saw the scene, scolding her daughter but also expressing joy that she had come home. William Miller tried to flatter Eleanor Miles, while Rose showed her happiness at reuniting with William. Both shared humorous and awkward moments together. Later, Rose Miles prepared dinner, and William felt hungry despite claiming he wasn't. The next morning, William called Rose by her childhood nickname, Crybaby, which angered her but also brought a smile she couldn't hide. Rose then handed William a helmet and invited him to ride with her on her motorbike. They left the house together, forming an adorable pair as they entered a fashion store. In a small yet well-stocked fashion store, William and Rose walked in, drawing the attention of everyone, including the shop owner. Their gazes were filled with envy and admiration for the youthful and cheerful couple. Rose, confidently letting go of William's hand, headed straight to the men's clothing section, leaving William feeling awkward. Unsure of what to do, he pretended to browse clothes and wandered into the women's section. While strolling around, William noticed a slightly ajar glass door. At first, he thought it was an advertisement for lingerie, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a young woman wearing a bra and small briefs, nearly naked. The sight left him both flustered and stimulated, with primal thoughts surfacing. He quickly shut his eyes but couldn't resist his curiosity and slowly opened them again, watching as the woman stepped out. She appeared to be in her 20s, graceful in figure, and seemingly unaware of William's gaze. When their eyes met by chance, they both exchanged smiles. William felt at ease and delighted by her charming smile, thinking himself lucky for the feast for his eyes and the dessert of her grin. The woman asked if William was shopping for clothes, and he replied that he was just browsing. Shortly after, Rose called out to William, holding a blue suit in her hands. Not daring to linger, William quickly waved goodbye to the woman and joined Rose. The woman watched him leave with a captivating smile, secretly thinking that William was handsome but a bit silly. When Rose asked William to try on the suit, he followed her instructions, from taking off his jacket to turning around for her to see. Rose began negotiating the price of the suit with the shop owner. William, not understanding the situation, suddenly interjected with the phrase $250, causing everyone in the store to burst into laughter. The shop owner glared at him, furious, as she misunderstood his words as an insult. Rose then pulled William aside to explain that his comment was inappropriate, leaving him feeling embarrassed and confused. He couldn't comprehend why a simple number could be considered offensive. Despite his shame, he couldn't help but laugh at the humorous misunderstanding. William Miller had just sold scrap materials and felt satisfied with the money he earned. In his mind, the image of the scrap buyer, severely injured, coughing up blood, and begging for mercy, surfaced, making him feel smug. However, the scrap buyer had already driven off in his electric vehicle, leaving William happily counting his money. William entered a small shop, where he met Mary Carter, a young, beautiful, and confident woman. She smiled and asked what he wanted to buy.
William, appearing clueless, didn't know which type of cigarette to choose.
Mary Carter sensed the attraction in his gaze but quickly regained her composure. She explained the different types of cigarettes, and eventually, he decided to buy a pack. When William paid, he accidentally touched her hand, making her feel warm. He joked about the chilly weather, causing Mary Carter to blush and invite him to visit often.
William left the shop, feeling elated as if he'd just scored a great deal.
On his way home, he encountered many villagers who didn't recognize him at first but were delighted when they learned he was Dennis Miller's son. William stepped into the communal committee office, where he met Chairman Danielson and Emily Grant, a young and beautiful village official. The atmosphere was friendly, and William felt welcomed. When William introduced himself, Chairman Danielson was overjoyed and encouraged him to share any difficulties he faced.
Emily Grant also looked at him with an encouraging gaze, boosting his confidence. Finally, William decided to apply for social assistance, challenging himself with determination.
Chairman Danielson asked him to write a petition, and William felt delighted to have the opportunity to receive support without much effort.
William Miller walked into Director Danielson's office, impeccably dressed, which instantly reminded Danielson of him.
Director Danielson immediately grew angry, criticizing William for seeking social assistance despite being a healthy young man with a polished appearance. He emphasized that social aid was meant for those truly in need, not for someone like William, who had previously caused trouble and brought distress to his family. Feeling ashamed, William lowered his head but soon decided to push back against Danielson's criticism. Emily Grant, the village officer, was surprised by the change in Danielson's tone, noticing that he was speaking more fluently than usual. Frustrated, William demanded that Danielson stop criticizing him, arguing that there was no need for such lengthy reasoning. Danielson eventually calmed down and acknowledged William's situation. He advised him to look for a job instead of relying on social aid and reminded him to reapply for personal documents, as he had been missing for a long time.
Danielson suggested that Emily Grant assist William in preparing a report to complete the paperwork.
Emily appeared friendly and supportive, making William feel more at ease. While she worked, William quietly observed her, captivated by her charm. They had a light-hearted conversation, and William felt lucky to have met someone as enchanting as Emily Grant. When Emily handed William the report, she smiled warmly and introduced herself.
William responded cheerfully, and the two exchanged playful remarks.
Their conversation became increasingly friendly, with William sensing mutual interest from Emily. Ultimately, William left the office in high spirits, while Emily watched him leave with admiration. William Miller felt a slight numbness in his head, wondering if it was his parents' spirits urging him to live better.
He was both skeptical and intrigued by the mystical idea.
While deep in thought, he sensed something in the bamboo forest and suspected it could be a wild animal or a person. When he called out loudly, a clear, cheerful laugh echoed from deep within the forest, leaving him startled and uneasy. To his surprise, Mary Carter, the girl he had met at a small shop, appeared, and both were astonished. Mary explained that she didn't need to manage the shop because her in-laws were helping out.
William found her delightful and cheerful, which put him at ease.
They chatted happily about her newfound freedom, and William complimented Mary on her beauty, making her smile. Mary handed William a plastic bag containing purple bamboo shoots, and he realized she had been foraging.
Though she was dressed modestly in sportswear, William couldn't help but admire her.
When William accidentally held her hand, both felt shy, but Mary suggested they could address each other more familiarly when alone. Their conversation grew warmer, with William praising Mary. She modestly denied being beautiful, but William assured her that a woman's charm wasn't defined by marital status. They continued chatting, with Mary expressing admiration for William and asking why he hadn't brought home a beautiful woman yet.
William could only respond with a sheepish laugh to Mary's teasing questions, and the atmosphere between them became lighthearted and relaxed.
Mary jokingly called William a Prince Charming, which made him feel pleased and self-satisfied. William Miller felt as if he were floating on air when Mary Carter praised him. He imagined himself as a perfect man, with beauty comparable to Song Yu or Panin.
However, when Mary asked him a question, William suddenly recalled a strange encounter from before and felt uneasy.
He tried to maintain a calm exterior, stating that men should prioritize their careers before love, and asked Mary if she felt lonely since her husband, Chow Kwok Hai, was often away fishing. Mary assured him she wasn't lonely, but her shy demeanor and gaze suggested otherwise. William realized that women often say the opposite of what they feel. He comforted her, saying it was good not to feel lonely, but acknowledged that everyone experiences loneliness at times. When Mary asked if William ever felt lonely, her concern made him happy. In a tense moment, William reached out to hold Mary's hand. Although she said she didn't want to, her body leaned toward him. William felt overjoyed as he held her hand and asked if there was anything she needed help with. As he leaned in to kiss her, Eleanor Miles's voice called out from afar, startling Mary. She pulled away from William and asked him to say she hadn't been there. In another scene, Emily Grant, a beautiful village officer, arrived at the construction site of a seaside bar. She made a strong impression on the workers, especially Jack Turner, the construction supervisor, who flattered her with compliments. Emily came to check the progress and interacted kindly with Jack, though he appeared awkward when trying to shake her hand. Emily, dressed in an elegant business outfit, captivated everyone's attention. As she approached, Jack enthusiastically introduced himself and the project, emphasizing his relationship with the boss. Emily remained modest and polite, stating she was there to inspect the site and offer assistance if needed. While observing the site, her gaze suddenly fell on William Miller, who was sitting alone by the embankment, lost in thought. William was immersed in romantic daydreams, but Emily's voice interrupted his thoughts. When she called his name, William quickly turned around, his eyes lighting up as he recognized her. He stood up excitedly and ran toward Emily, creating a delightful and unexpected moment between them. When Emily saw William, she was overjoyed and couldn't hide her excitement. She asked why he was at the site, and he shyly replied that life is full of unexpected encounters. Emily remarked that William had a poetic view of life and sympathized upon learning he was working as a laborer. William laughed proudly, embracing his work. Emily encouraged him, saying there was no shame in being a laborer as it showed self-reliance. They shook hands, and the warmth and softness of her hand gave William a comforting feeling. The workers cheered enthusiastically for the two, hoping for a romantic moment. When William opened his arms to hug Emily, she hesitated but eventually leaned into his embrace amid the workers' cheers. They smiled at each other but didn't go further. William gently comforted Emily, whispering that he understood her feelings. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, creating an intimate moment. However, the cheerful atmosphere was disrupted by Jack Turner, who angrily shouted for everyone to return to work. Jack appeared upset by how close William and Emily had become. Feeling embarrassed, Emily asked William if he thought the hometown was beautiful, to which he replied that it was, but not as beautiful as her. They chatted briefly before Emily left. As she walked away, William couldn't take his eyes off her, while Jack scolded him for wasting time. William felt resentful toward Jack, who threatened to cut his pay. Unfazed, William asserted that he liked his job and didn't need Jack's interference. Jack, angered, made provocative remarks insinuating that William relied on women for support. This infuriated William, who threatened to hit Jack. Jack, unafraid, stepped closer, leading to a physical altercation. In the end, William struck Jack with a brick, injuring him. After William Miller caused an incident by hitting Jack Turner, the scene became chaotic with shouts and the sound of police sirens echoing from afar. Amid the panic, Rose Miles received a phone call from Deputy Chief Lee at the police station, urgently requesting her presence. Feeling anxious and nervous, she hurriedly left her accounting office and quickly rode her motorbike to the station. Upon arrival, she exuded confidence and charm, walking into Robert Lee's office with a commanding presence. When she met Deputy Chief Lee, Rose Miles wasted no time asking about William Miller's situation. Robert Lee calmly explained that the incident was merely a minor altercation, although William had used a brick to hit Jack Turner, causing a slight injury. Nevertheless, Robert Lee reassured her that the injury was not serious and that she could take William home. Feeling relieved, Rose Miles expressed her gratitude to Robert Lee and, during their conversation, tactfully mentioned that William was just her mother's adopted son. This response put Robert Lee at ease about his chances with her, and they shared some intimate moments during their chat. As Rose Miles left the station, she saw William Miller stepping out, looking cheerful and confident. William hugged her tightly, catching her off guard. Despite her mild resistance, William put on her helmet and boldly declared that he would not allow anyone to insult her again. On their way home, William confidently boasted about his driving skills, claiming he had been riding motorbikes for a long time and could drive as fast as the wind. Rose Miles, both worried and amused, held onto him tightly as he sped along. They shared light-hearted conversations, with William frequently bragging about his achievements, making Rose Miles burst into laughter. She realized he was exaggerating everything, but it only added to the humor. As they approached home, in an unexpected moment, Rose Miles suddenly jumped off the bike without saying a word, grabbed her bag, and ran inside, leaving William standing there, bewildered. William Miller felt confused and puzzled by Rose Miles' sudden anger. He quickly got off the bike, tucked the helmet under his arm, and ran after her, calling her name with excitement. However, a strong gust of wind unexpectedly pushed him back, making him stumble. After regaining his balance, he rubbed his sore nose, silently thankful it wasn't seriously hurt. When he reached Rose Miles' door, he gently knocked, trying to understand why she was upset. He felt wrong since they had been laughing and joking just moments before. When Rose Miles opened the door, his momentum caused him to stumble inside, falling on top of her, creating an awkward situation. William found the moment amusing as he lay on her, but quickly realized he couldn't stay like that for long as she began struggling and getting angry. Rose Miles, breathing heavily, scolded him, prompting him to apologize repeatedly and quickly get up. She angrily adjusted her clothes and sat on the bed, her face flushed. Although William felt frustrated, not knowing what he had done wrong, he still tried to make amends, complimenting her beauty. When William asked Rose Miles to explain why she was upset, she refused and instead demanded that he explain why he had fought. He clarified that he only wanted to stand on his own and acted that way because of her. Rose Miles didn't believe him and grew even angrier when he spoke about protecting her honor. When William talked about fighting to defend her, Rose Miles felt touched but quickly turned to scold him for embarrassing her family. Despite his attempts to explain that hard work was honorable and that he didn't want to be seen as a kept man, Rose Miles remained dissatisfied. Their argument unfolded with complex emotions, ranging from anger to tenderness, reflecting the deep connection and conflicts in their relationship. William Miller was very afraid of Rose Miles being angry because she was the only one who could make him feel so anxious. When she questioned him about the reason for the fight, he tried to justify himself and swore he wasn't lying. Even though Rose Miles didn't trust him, he insisted that there was no one else involved except Emily Grant, the female student she had introduced to him. When she scolded him, he dramatically acted out, swearing that if he had fought because of Emily Grant, he would face tragic deaths like being hit by a car or choking on tea. His dramatic vows moved Rose Miles, making her realize she had wronged him. In a moment of emotion, she threw herself into his arms, surprising William Miller but also making him very happy, feeling as though all misunderstandings had been resolved. Meanwhile, in the bustling town vegetable market, where the atmosphere was always lively and noisy, William Miller stood next to his boss, Henry Gold, who was complaining about a stomachache caused by eating unclean food. The boss asked him to watch over the stall while he went to the restroom, and William confidently assured him that he could remember the prices of the seafood. Henry Gold pointed out the price of each type of seafood, from fresh fish to live shrimp, and William attentively memorized every detail. After the boss left, he began enthusiastically calling out to customers, confident like a seasoned vendor. His voice echoed through the noisy market, attracting the attention of the women around. They praised him for being both attractive and possessing a special charisma, which made him feel elated. William Miller not only sold seafood but also created a cheerful atmosphere, making customers laugh and engage in conversations. He enjoyed this moment, feeling satisfied with the attention he received from everyone. This boosted his confidence, as if he had found a part of himself in the business of selling. On a bustling afternoon at the seafood market, the air was filled with the calls of vendors and the scent of the sea. Two women stood by the stall, one of them wanting to approach William Miller but hesitating, saying the opposite of what she felt. Her bolder friend urged her to flirt with the handsome man selling seafood. Finally, friendship and encouragement pushed her to make the move. When William Miller saw them, his eyes lit up, and he immediately paused his sales pitch. He noticed the attention from the two beautiful women and confidently pointed to the live seafood in the tubs, proudly exclaiming, "Look! Fresh seafood!" His voice rang out amidst the noisy atmosphere, drawing the attention not just of the two women but also of other customers. The two women started chatting about William Miller, with one commenting that he was not only good-looking but also had a strong physique. They pretended to inspect the seafood in the tubs while occasionally glancing at him, as if searching for the perfect angle to admire him. Their subtle interaction showed that they were women who knew how to charm and attract men's attention. When one of the women asked about the price of crabs, William Miller quickly answered, but when the second woman expressed surprise at the price, he immediately adjusted it, saying the price was only 5 coins per pound. His response surprised both women, but they quickly changed their attitude, affirming that the price was very reasonable. They began competing to buy the crabs, creating a lively and cheerful atmosphere around the stall. Suddenly, Henry Gold, the stall owner, returned from the restroom, tidying his clothes and noticing the empty crab tub. A smile spread across his face upon seeing the goods sold out. However, when he asked William Miller about the selling price of the crabs and heard the answer of 5 coins per pound, he immediately became furious. He couldn't believe that William had sold the goods so cheaply and kicked him out of the stall. William Miller felt it was unfair because the boss had set the price himself but now blamed him. At that tense moment, Rose Miles appeared, overhearing the conversation between the two and bursting into laughter. She quickly intervened, defending William and deciding to help him find a new job. Henry Gold refused to pay William his wages, but Rose Miles generously waved it off, saying there was no need if he didn't want to. She tossed William a helmet, showing her care and support. William Miller, with a cheerful face, asked Rose Miles about the new job she had found for him. She merely smiled and said she would explain more when they got home. They left the seafood stall, with William Miller striding ahead of her to climb onto the motorbike. As they rode down the street, the admiring and envious gazes of those around them followed, making William feel proud and happy. In the bustling atmosphere of the Central Town Elementary School, the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Cheerful and lively children poured out of their classrooms like colorful waves, accompanied by teachers who also stepped out one by one. William Miller, a substitute 6th grade math teacher, walked confidently with a stack of books and assignments in his hands, exuding the demeanor of a soldier. William Miller was introduced by Rose Miles to temporarily replace Mr. Danielson, who had recently been diagnosed with a terminal illness. He enjoyed teaching math because it was concise, clear, and not prolonged, making both him and the students feel at ease. As he entered the office, he received friendly greetings from students and colleagues, showcasing his good integration into the new environment. While attentively grading papers, William Miller suddenly heard the clear voice of Victoria Bell, the class vice president and math monitor. The beautiful girl stood shyly and somewhat nervously by his desk, asking about a math problem. William noticed a change in Victoria Bell's attitude. She had been a good student but now showed signs of distraction. He patiently listened and helped her solve the problem, making her happy and grateful. After Victoria Bell left, William encountered another teacher, Ms. Lane, who was charming and friendly. She mimicked Victoria Bell's tone to tease him. Their conversation was light-hearted, filled with questions about dinner as Ms. Lane invited him. Initially, William seemed reluctant, but he soon caught on to her humor. When Ms. Lane asked why he wouldn't join her for dinner, William explained that he needed to visit his foster mother, which surprised her. She hadn't known he had a mother, and upon hearing about his foster mother, she humorously expressed jealousy. Their banter was both playful and slightly sarcastic, reflecting the friendly and humorous interactions among the school's teachers. Ms. Lane smiled charmingly, expressing hope for the future and the development of their relationship. William Miller, feeling uplifted as he thought of Rose Miles, gained a sense of motivation. However, the school bell suddenly rang, marking the swift passage of time. Ms. Lane sighed regretfully at the short moment they had and left the room. Later, William entered the principal's office, where he was greeted warmly by name. The principal invited him to sit and poured him a drink, showing friendliness. The conversation began with an unexpected question about medicine. The principal asked William about the differences between Eastern and Western medicine, to which he quickly responded that each had its advantages depending on the type of illness. William emphasized that for conditions requiring surgery, Western medicine was better, but for other ailments, Eastern medicine could be more effective. The principal agreed with his perspective and continued to discuss patient psychology.
They debated whether to conceal illnesses or inform patients about their conditions. William argued that hiding the illness was often better since many people with severe diseases lived longer when not frightened by their prognosis. The conversation flowed comfortably and amicably, with the principal praising William not only for his intelligence but also for his kind nature. Finally, the principal informed William that he would receive 2 months' pay for his work, which made him feel content. The scene shifted to the beach, where Captain Peter Fuller stood before the new members of the lifeguard team, announcing the formation of the water rescue team. He introduced the new members, including William Miller, and encouraged everyone to applaud them. Despite the enthusiastic clapping, the sound of the ocean waves overpowered it, creating a lively atmosphere. As the captain began outlining the rules and discipline of the rescue team, some members were snacking during duty. When the captain noticed, he reprimanded them for violating regulations. David Miles, a team member, nervously asked William Miller if snacking was allowed. William casually replied that it was fine. David quickly grabbed snacks and shared them with everyone. However, when Captain Peter Fuller returned and saw everyone eating, he was displeased and scolded them for breaking discipline. William stood up for his teammates, pointing out that the rules did not prohibit snacking. The captain, skeptical, decided to check the rulebook. After flipping through the pages and finding no clause against snacking, he had to accept the truth and allowed everyone to continue eating. The atmosphere within the team became more relaxed, with everyone cheerful and united, fostering a strong sense of camaraderie among the rescue team members. In a cheerful atmosphere, William Miller's teammates cheered and rushed over, lifting him and his chair high into the air, creating an exciting scene. Thomas Dixon, one of the teammates, happily declared he would treat William Miller to drinks tonight, and David Miles enthusiastically agreed. However, when Thomas Dixon wanted to host the party, David Miles argued over who would pay. The debate turned humorous when William Miller intervened, saying he couldn't join tonight because his foster mother was preparing his favorite dish. He emphasized that his foster mother had been a great influence in his life, even more than his biological mother, surprising everyone but earning their understanding. William Miller suggested treating everyone another time, which the team excitedly agreed to. They then lifted him into the air once more, heightening the lively atmosphere. Since William Miller joined the High 10 Beach Rescue Team, the place had become vibrant and full of energy. The scene shifted to the beach, where the atmosphere grew lively as the tourist season began. William Miller was sitting under a sunshade when he heard a familiar female voice. Turning around, he saw Emily Grant approaching with a radiant smile. Though he felt delighted inside, William Miller only offered a faint smile and didn't stand to greet her. David Miles, however, enthusiastically invited Emily Grant to sit next to William Miller. Emily requested not to be addressed as chief, but David flattered her, saying titles didn't matter. William Miller feigned surprise at seeing Emily Grant, making her laugh in amusement. They chatted cheerfully, though William Miller appeared somewhat disinterested, often gazing out at the sea. When Emily asked about his job, William admitted that working here was much better than his previous odd jobs. Emily murmured about the beauty of the seaside, piquing William's curiosity. She gestured toward the beachgoers, saying they were the beautiful scenery. William secretly chuckled, realizing she was envious of them. As he observed Emily in her summer outfit, he couldn't help but imagine how wonderful it would be if she swam in the sea. However, he acted bored, prompting Emily to worry and ask him what was wrong. William sighed, joking that watching so many people swim was exhausting, but it was his responsibility. Emily laughed brightly at his humor, and he continued teasing, saying that if there were views like her, he wouldn't suffer from eye fatigue. Emily understood his implication and smiled gracefully, but both felt a mix of emotions, adding a layer of intrigue and sentiment to the atmosphere. As William and Emily continued their lively conversation, he encouraged her to wear a swimsuit and enjoy the beach. Emily, feeling shy at the thought of wearing a swimsuit in front of William and everyone else, hesitated. But William didn't give her a chance to refuse, persistently convincing her it was the perfect opportunity. When Emily still hesitated, William called Thomas Dixon to fetch a swimsuit for her. Despite her initial nervousness about changing, she eventually allowed William to lead her to the rescue team's station to change. He cleverly left a small gap in the door, feeling a thrill at the thought of catching a glimpse of her changing. When Emily emerged in her swimsuit, her captivating beauty left William feeling exhilarated. They waded into the water together, but Emily appeared frightened by the large waves. William tried teaching her how to swim, but when he unexpectedly let go, Emily swallowed seawater and coughed uncontrollably. Despite the awkwardness, they continued the swimming lesson. During the process, an incident occurred when William's hand accidentally touched Emily's stomach, causing both of them to blush and feel embarrassed. To ease the situation, William called Thomas Dixon and David Miles to bring a lifebuoy to help Emily learn to swim more comfortably. Emily looked at William with admiration, recognizing his organizational and leadership skills. In the end, William assigned tasks to his teammates, determined to ensure Emily could learn to swim safely and effectively. William Miller woke up from an intimate dream in which he envisioned Mary Carter. The arousal from the dream left him confused and embarrassed as he became aware of his erection. Touching his underwear and feeling dampness further added to his bewilderment. He wondered if he had experienced a nocturnal emission and questioned why it was Mary Carter in his dream and not other women he knew. After washing his face, William Miller had breakfast consisting of crispy fried bread and soy milk prepared by his foster mother, Eleanor Miles. He appreciated her care and silently vowed to work hard to repay her kindness. When he arrived at the beach, William Miller greeted souvenir vendors warmly, showcasing his friendly and sociable nature. However, the weather suddenly changed, with waves beginning to rise. Captain Peter Fuller immediately mobilized the rescue team, ordering the evacuation of tourists from the beach for safety. William Miller and his colleagues actively assisted the tourists, ensuring they reached the shore safely. While working, he noticed a group of about 20 people remaining in the dangerous waters despite warnings from the rescue team. Confident in their swimming abilities, they dismissed the danger, which deeply worried William Miller and Thomas Dixon. Captain Peter Fuller, frustrated by the situation, expressed anger as it was the first time he had encountered such a stubborn group of tourists. He ordered them to come ashore, but they refused to comply. Feeling the heavy responsibility of safeguarding lives, William Miller decided to try persuading them using a loudspeaker. As he held the loudspeaker, he felt immense pressure to convey the severity of the situation. With a strong and determined voice, he urged them to return, emphasizing the increasing danger of the waves. He knew that timely action was crucial to prevent potential harm. William Miller's determination was evident not only in his words but also in his readiness to jump into the waves to save lives, demonstrating the courage and responsibility of a lifeguard. Amid the turbulent sea, he hoped his efforts would protect everyone and affirm his role in the rescue team. Standing before the crowd of tourists on the beach, William Miller began with a powerful speech on the importance of adhering to regulations. He stressed that every nation has laws, every family has rules, and every beach has its own guidelines to ensure safety. Amid the roaring waves, he continued with a serious tone, explaining that maturity is not just about age but also about responsibility for oneself and others. He clarified that each person's life is not solely their own but is connected to their parents, society, and the beach they are visiting. William Miller emphasized that people must take responsibility not only for themselves but also for their families and communities. He urged everyone to reflect on his words, stating that higher principles must be respected. If reasoning failed to convince them, he was prepared to enforce stricter measures, even requiring them to sign a safety commitment. Thanks to his sincere persuasion and solid reasoning, William Miller gradually won over the crowd, convincing them to leave the dangerous waters. The previously defiant youths now expressed gratitude and respect for him. However, William Miller's actions did not sit well with Captain Peter Fuller, who was displeased with the way William seemed to take on a leadership role at the beach. When William Miller and his colleagues spotted a couple standing on a submerged rock amidst the large waves, he immediately raised the alarm to warn them. Seeing the urgency of the situation, William called for everyone to assist in rescuing those in danger. However, Peter Fuller outright refused, arguing that the submerged rock was outside the rescue team's jurisdiction. He reminded William Miller that the team was only responsible for the managed beach area and that rescuing people elsewhere was not their duty. William strongly disagreed, asserting that saving lives was the top priority and could not be ignored under any circumstances. The debate between the two became heated, with William Miller firmly declaring that the rescue team must act.
He was not only concerned for the safety of the couple on the rock but also felt the heavy responsibility of helping those in need. Ultimately, when Peter Fuller received a call from a superior instructing the rescue team to take action, he had no choice but to agree. As William Miller led his teammates in preparing jet skis for the rescue, Peter Fuller was taken aback and could hardly believe his eyes. He realized that William Miller was not just an ordinary lifeguard but a brave individual willing to face danger to protect others. Despite the tension between them, William remained steadfast in carrying out the rescue mission, showcasing his sense of duty and courage. William Miller clapped his hands with joy, expressing excitement at being assigned a rescue mission. He showed great enthusiasm, eager to take on the challenging task. However, Captain Peter Fuller unexpectedly ordered him to stay back and wait for further instructions, leaving William both surprised and dissatisfied. Peter Fuller took command, assigning Thomas Dixon and David Miles to the mission, instructing them to bring life jackets and emphasizing the importance of their safety during the rescue. Thomas Dixon and David Miles agreed but cast glances at William Miller, revealing their discontent with Peter Fuller's decision. William said nothing further, simply smiling to encourage his teammates. As the motorboat sped toward the reef, William watched every move anxiously, concerned for their safety. The motorboat roared, but the rescue proved difficult. After 3 attempts, Thomas Dixon and David Miles could only throw life jackets to the 2 stranded tourists on the reef without getting any closer. William felt worried and frustrated by the lack of effectiveness in the rescue efforts. Determined to take action himself, he resolved to join the rescue. When Peter Fuller finally allowed him to go, William was thrilled. However, both Thomas Dixon and David Miles also wanted to join, but William chose David Miles to pilot the boat. He instructed David to follow his guidance despite the rough waves. As the boat neared the reef, William decided to jump into the water to save the tourists. He leaped like a seabird, landing on the reef. A massive wave crashed over them, submerging all 3. However, William quickly surfaced, wearing a life jacket and holding the 2 tourists, who were also equipped with life jackets, under his arms. He soared into the air, water splashing around him like rain, and swiftly landed back on the motorboat piloted by David Miles. The situation was intense and suspenseful, showcasing William Miller's courage and determination to save lives despite the dangers. The rescue unfolded dramatically, filled with powerful emotions and gripping tension for both the characters and the audience. William Miller had just completed a dramatic rescue, bringing the 2 tourists back from the reef amidst the raging sea. If he had failed to jump onto the motorboat in time, the consequences could have been dire. As he and the rescue team returned to the beach, a large crowd lined the coastal road, heightening the suspense. All eyes were fixed on the reef, hearts suspended in midair, only to be relieved when William Miller appeared safe. Cheers erupted like a festival, with people celebrating and expressing gratitude to the rescue team. The city secretary and deputy mayor were present, rushing to the beach to commend those involved in the rescue. As the motorboat docked, David Miles accelerated to bring William Miller and the 2 tourists ashore. The moment the motorboat stopped, rescue staff swarmed in to assist Lily Taylor and CEO Maxwell off the boat. Lily Taylor, with her soaked hair and form-fitting attire, drew everyone's attention as she glanced back at William Miller. Meanwhile, William, though partially obscured by the crowd, stood out with his confident and composed demeanor. As he stepped ashore, Secretary Tanner approached, thanking and praising William and the rescue team. William humbly responded, emphasizing that it was a collective responsibility. The praise from Secretary Tanner and the agreement from his teammates created a warm atmosphere. After completing the mission, William and his teammates went to a beachside bar to relax. There, Rose Miles appeared in a stunning outfit, catching William's attention. As she approached, their eyes met, reflecting closeness and joy. Shortly after, Emily Grant, the deputy head of Peach Blossom Village, arrived, wearing a checkered white dress that highlighted her graceful beauty. Her presence added tension, especially as Rose leaned into William, showing her connection with him. Emily immediately recognized William and ran over to greet him, sparking an unspoken rivalry between the 2 women. When Peter Fuller left due to family matters, William felt the pressure of managing the situation between the 2 women. He tried to maintain a cheerful atmosphere, inviting everyone to sit and ordering food and drinks for the gathering. William sought not only to please both women but also to create a comfortable space for everyone. The meeting at the bar promised to bring more interesting and tense moments, as the rivalry between Rose Miles and Emily Grant lingered, while William worked to keep harmony in his relationships. On a beautiful morning, the members of the Peach Blossom Village Sea Rescue Team sat on the beach, chatting about last night's dinner at the bar. Thomas Dixon cheerfully commented on the talents of William Miller, who had organized a free meal for the entire team.
He praised William Miller as an electronics expert, a remark that drew laughter from everyone.
David Miles joined the conversation, emphasizing that although William Miller might seem clumsy, he could be surprisingly resourceful when needed. Other team members grew curious about William Miller's skills in repairing household electronics. They also discussed the expression on Jack Turner's face, the bar manager, whom they suspected might come to demand payment. Their disdain for Jack Turner was evident in their remarks. When Jack Turner appeared, Thomas Dixon and David Miles worried he might be there to collect money. Peter Fuller, the team leader, grew irritated by the members' curiosity, but Jack Turner appeared friendly, assuring them he wasn't there to demand payment. Meanwhile, Peter Fuller felt frustrated by the praise William Miller had received from Deputy Chief Wang during a meeting, which made him feel criticized.
Amid these tensions, Jack Turner tried to provoke Peter Fuller by suggesting William Miller could potentially replace him. Though Peter Fuller didn't agree, he couldn't deny William Miller's contributions to the rescue team. Their conversation unfolded with conflicts and doubts, reflecting workplace competition. Jack Turner offered a red envelope as a gift, but Peter Fuller declined, feeling uncomfortable accepting money from him. Ultimately, Jack Turner persuaded Peter Fuller to accept it, leaving him more pressured than ever. Peach Blossom Beach, renowned for its natural beauty and appearances in popular TV dramas, attracted many tourists. William Miller, the beach manager, faced the challenge of managing the summer crowds. While observing, he noticed Emily Grant, a beautiful girl he admired, walking toward the sea in a stunning swimsuit. William Miller felt uneasy because Emily Grant had seemed distant recently. He decided to call her name, but Emily Grant appeared shy and didn't want to disturb him at work. She explained she didn't mean anything by it and just didn't want to cause trouble. William Miller tried to create a relaxed atmosphere, but Emily Grant maintained her distance. Their encounter was filled with complex emotions, as William Miller tried to exude confidence and warmth, while Emily Grant remained reserved and cautious. Their interaction hinted at an unclear relationship, filled with uncertainties and hesitations, promising intriguing developments in the future. William Miller and Emily Grant shared a light-hearted conversation on the beach, during which Emily Grant thanked him for his concern but asked him not to worry about her. William Miller cheerfully replied that she could always ask him for help if needed. After Emily Grant left, Rose Miles appeared in a new swimsuit, catching William Miller's attention. He couldn't stop complimenting her, but when Rose Miles sat close, he couldn't hide his excitement, prompting her to quickly stop him. They had a playful conversation, during which Rose Miles complained about not having as much freedom as Emily Grant. When William Miller suggested that Rose Miles go swimming, she playfully demanded compensation for not being able to go with him earlier. Eventually, they decided to swim together, where William Miller showcased his swimming skills and took care of Rose Miles. They playfully splashed around in the water, creating moments of closeness. When William Miller hugged Rose Miles, she was surprised but laughed happily, making him feel lucky. However, the beautiful morning turned tense when William Miller received a notification from Thomas Dixon that team leader Peter Fuller wanted to see him. Upon entering the office, he was shocked to learn he had been dismissed due to accusations of harassing tourists. Peter Fuller, unable to look him in the eye, explained that the complaints came from Sophia Mason and Dong T. William Miller, confused by the accusations, felt it was unfair and wondered if swimming with Rose Miles had been misinterpreted as inappropriate. He recalled an afternoon when he had tried to mediate a quarrel between two tourists, emphasizing the importance of peace and understanding while traveling. Despite the tension, he stood firm in his beliefs. Tourists Jayapan had had a dispute but eventually resolved it thanks to the intervention of William Miller. Jayap admitted his mistake and apologized, while it also bowed his head in apology, creating a more peaceful atmosphere. William Miller felt relieved after helping them, humming a tune as he emerged from the sea. As he stepped out of the water, he felt a hand touch his back.
Turning around, he saw a young woman with a seductive figure, but when she turned her face, her strange features left William Miller stunned. Her eyes were sunken, her nose flat, and her mouth resembled a thunderous mouth, which made him lose interest. The woman asked him to teach her how to swim, but when William Miller refused, she hugged him tightly from behind, making him uncomfortable and unable to easily free himself. William Miller tried to gently persuade her to let go, but she seduced him with suggestive words, escalating the tension. He didn't dare use force to remove her hands for fear of hurting her. Finally, with determination, he managed to free himself and ran to the beach, feeling frustrated at having to deal with such an awkward situation.
When William Miller met Captain Peter Fuller, he was accused of harassment by the woman, and the captain didn't believe his explanation.
William Miller felt it was unfair to be dismissed so unreasonably and wondered why he had such bad luck. The next chapter describes a massive storm outside, with thunder, lightning, and heavy rain.
William Miller woke up in a panic, feeling uneasy.
Suddenly, the phone rang, and Emily Grant's soft voice pleaded for his help. He quickly brushed his teeth, washed his face, and took the tram to the commune committee.
Upon arrival, William Miller saw a large crowd of villagers gathered, all appearing angry and agitated.
Emily Grant, looking exhausted, tried to calmly explain the situation to everyone, but they were dissatisfied with her answers and demanded intervention from higher authorities. A middle-aged man questioned the officials' management, blaming them for causing significant damage to the villagers. William Miller realized the situation was more complicated and tense than he had imagined. He felt the need to do something to help Emily Grant and the villagers at this moment.
William Miller arrived at the commune committee and saw Emily Grant struggling with an angry group of villagers.
They were demanding an explanation about a strong thunderstorm that had damaged electrical equipment in nearly 100 households. Emily Grant explained that Chairman Danielson was away at a meeting, and she was in charge of resolving the situation. She asked for more time to address the issue, but the villagers refused. Meanwhile, William Miller unexpectedly proposed that it would only take a day to fix everything, which made Emily Grant skeptical of his motives. William Miller confidently assured her and promised to repair everything. He began gathering repair tools and instructed the villagers to bring their damaged equipment to the meeting room. Everyone agreed and felt relieved to see he had a clear plan. Emily Grant was grateful for William Miller's skills and organizational ability.
While William Miller repaired the tram, Emily Grant stood nearby observing.
They chatted cheerfully, and William Miller didn't hesitate to tease her. Emily Grant also showed concern for him, asking about his well-being and helping him wipe his sweat. William Miller successfully repaired 8 trams, including some that weren't damaged by the lightning, but he decided not to mention it so everyone could benefit.
Emily Grant announced to the villagers that all the equipment had been fixed.
She seemed happy and excited to see William Miller's work going smoothly. While repairing a television in the meeting room, Emily Grant continued to care for him, pouring water and wiping his face. William Miller felt comfortable and cheerful under her care. Finally, William Miller entered the accounting room and noticed the oppressive heat, making the work more challenging. He prepared to continue working, hoping to finish everything soon so he could rest. After seeing off the villagers who came to collect electrical appliances, Emily Grant cheerfully stepped into the restroom, where William Miller had just entered nearby. She felt an urgent need to relieve herself after
drinking a lot of water and not having time to go.
Sitting on the pristine white toilet, she let out a steady stream, easing her discomfort. Meanwhile, William Miller was washing his hair and hands when he suddenly heard an unusual noise from the partition. He paused, his ears perked up, and a sly smile appeared on his face as he guessed that Emily Grant was next door. Images of her curvaceous figure flashed through his mind, stirring both excitement and unease within him. As a few glimmers of light flickered in William Miller's restroom, the door opened, and Emily Grant appeared with a smile. She asked if he was still there, and William Miller, flustered, quickly adjusted his clothes before stepping out. He looked at Emily Grant with a scrutinizing gaze, unable to take his eyes off her. Emily Grant thanked William Miller for helping her and the villagers. He modestly replied, but a mischievous thought crossed his mind as he asked how she planned to express her gratitude. Emily Grant blinked and asked him to clarify, then affirmed she would agree to anything he wanted. Sensing an opportunity, William Miller suggested a hug as a token of thanks. Surprised but obliging, Emily Grant opened her arms wide. As they embraced, William Miller felt his heart pounding. She rested her head on his shoulder, her breath fragrant like orchids, making it impossible for him to resist. They kissed passionately, momentarily forgetting everything around them. However, the intensity of the moment overwhelmed William Miller, and he couldn't stop himself. He began to caress Emily Grant's body, and she did not resist, signaling her consent. Just as he was about to remove her dress, a loud voice called out from outside, "Director Zhao! Director Zhao, are you there?" The shout startled them both. Emily Grant quickly pushed William Miller away, adjusted her clothes, and checked herself in the mirror to regain composure. She told him to leave through the back, while William Miller remained dazed by what had just transpired. When William Miller stepped out, he encountered Jack Turner, another man waiting outside. Jack Turner looked at William Miller with astonishment and jealousy, his eyes filled with resentment. He confronted Emily Grant about why William Miller was in the restroom, creating a tense atmosphere. Emily Grant tried to mediate, explaining that William Miller had been helping her and the villagers, but Jack Turner was not satisfied. A heated exchange followed, with William Miller confidently responding without hesitation, showing no fear. Furious, Jack Turner stormed off, leaving William Miller and Emily Grant behind. William Miller felt irritated with Jack Turner for interrupting their sweet moment. He inwardly cursed Jack Turner for arriving at such an inopportune time, ruining what had just happened between him and Emily Grant. Emily Grant looked at William Miller with a mix of confusion, slight reproach, but also a hint of amusement. They stood there, the air still heavy with emotion, though the situation had now become more complicated. At a table, a young man sat waiting in tension. When William Miller brought Emily Grant over, he immediately stood up, his eyes lighting up as he called her name with an emotional tone. Emily Grant remained calm, not responding, merely glancing at the young man before introducing William Miller as her boyfriend. William Miller, with a smug demeanor, wearing sunglasses, shook Richard Lee's hand coldly. Richard Lee felt passive in the face of William Miller's actions but still greeted him politely. Emily Grant leaned her head on William Miller's shoulder, showing closeness and pride in him, making Richard Lee uncomfortable. As they sat down, William Miller displayed arrogance by taking care of Emily Grant, while Richard Lee tried to maintain his composure. He placed an order, but William Miller repeatedly opposed and suggested other dishes, creating tension between the two. Emily Grant couldn't help but laugh at their exchanges. With a disdainful look, Richard Lee asked William Miller about his educational background. William Miller confidently stated that he had dropped out before graduating, giving Richard Lee an opportunity to belittle him. William Miller continued talking about his travels in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, making Richard Lee uneasy. Richard Lee appeared skeptical and doubtful of William Miller's stories, but William Miller remained composed, exuding confidence with his tales. Richard Lee was horrified upon hearing information about William Miller, whom he suspected of being involved in drug and arms trafficking. His mouth dropped open, his skin crawled, and he stared at William Miller before turning to Emily Grant with a doubtful look. However, seeing Emily Grant laughing cheerfully only left Richard Lee more bewildered. William Miller, oblivious to Richard Lee's fear, enthusiastically invited him to drink and toast, forcing Richard Lee to regain his composure. Emily Grant excused herself to go to the restroom, and William Miller appeared generous, patting her on the shoulder with a friendly smile. After she left, Richard Lee quickly followed her, but his mind was already devising a plan to protect Emily Grant from William Miller. In the restroom, Richard Lee struck up a conversation with Emily Grant, pretending to wash his hands while expressing concern about William Miller. He suggested that William Miller was a crook, a shady figure in society. Emily Grant responded nonchalantly, saying she liked William Miller, which left Richard Lee feeling frustrated. He couldn't understand why she would choose someone like that. When Richard Lee warned her of the dangers associated with William Miller, Emily Grant remained indifferent and cold, leaving Richard Lee astonished. She sneered at his concern, making him feel helpless. Emily Grant left the restroom gracefully, leaving Richard Lee with heavy thoughts. Back at the table with William Miller, he asked Richard Lee about his job. Richard Lee proudly mentioned working at a company, and William Miller sarcastically remarked that humility could also be a form of arrogance. The two began discussing work pressures, with William Miller elaborating on the difficulties and competition faced by office workers. Richard Lee acknowledged William Miller's eloquence but felt irritated by his arrogance. Meanwhile, Emily Grant joined the conversation, mentioning Richard Lee's wealth, which made him feel embarrassed and uncomfortable. Richard Lee then opened up about his relationship with Lam Lon, a woman who had caused him much suffering. He explained that he endured significant pressure before ultimately deciding to divorce her. Richard Lee expressed his desire for a simple life, free from the demands and stress brought on by Lam Lon. Listening to Richard Lee talk about his past relationship, Emily Grant felt uneasy and slightly jealous. She couldn't understand why Richard Lee had endured such a relationship. Meanwhile, William Miller mocked Richard Lee but also noticed lingering feelings between him and Lam Lon. He began contemplating whether he should help reconcile them while reflecting on the broken relationship between Richard Lee and Lam Lon. William Miller was sitting, rubbing his head and nose, his face dazed and contemplative as he reflected on what had just happened. Emily Grant, with a straightforward gaze, looked at Richard Lee and noticed that despite his large eyes, thick eyebrows, and handsome face, he radiated an unmistakable sorrow. Meanwhile, Richard Lee, with a low and somewhat aggrieved voice, insisted that he was not a freeloader as Emily Grant might think. She gently responded that she had no such thought, but Richard Lee still felt a pang in his heart, assuming she might judge him that way. Sensing the tense atmosphere, William Miller decided to stand up and invited Richard Lee for a drink. He filled his glass and downed the first one, punishing himself for the unpleasant words he had spoken earlier. Even though Richard Lee tried to stop him, William Miller continued drinking, showing enthusiasm and determination to get drunk. He even punished himself with several more glasses, turning the atmosphere lively yet somewhat tipsy. As William Miller began to get drunk, Emily Grant worriedly called his name, showing her concern. Although William Miller insisted he wasn't drunk, it was clear he had consumed far too much. When he tried to stand up, he fell to the ground, creating a humorous yet emotional moment. Emily Grant couldn't help but worry, quickly bending down to help him up, while Richard Lee stood nearby, feeling awkward. As Emily Grant tried to pull William Miller onto a chair, both of them ended up falling to the ground, creating an amusing scene. Their closeness made Richard Lee feel uneasy. He suggested taking William Miller to a hotel to rest, and Emily Grant agreed, showing her care for William Miller. Together, they helped William Miller along, while he kept shouting that he wasn't drunk, though he could no longer stand steadily. As they moved together, William Miller occasionally winked at Richard Lee, sending shivers down his spine. Richard Lee realized that, despite William Miller's seemingly reckless behavior, deep down, he was kind-hearted and thoughtful. When they finally got William Miller into the hotel room, he lay flat on the bed, still yelling about wanting more drinks. This behavior left Richard Lee and Emily Grant both bewildered and helpless. When Richard Lee tried to take care of William Miller by covering him with a blanket, William Miller had already fallen asleep, snoring loudly. Richard Lee then suggested to Emily Grant that they go for a walk outside, but she declined, choosing to stay and care for William Miller. Her concern for William Miller created a complex atmosphere between the three of them, reflecting the tangled emotions and relationships among them. William Miller's snoring abruptly stopped, prompting him to fling off the white blanket and glare fiercely at Emily Grant and Richard Lee. Pointing a finger at them, he muttered incessantly, demanding they leave. Richard Lee, agitated by William Miller's anger, anxiously glanced at Emily Grant, advising her to leave. However, Emily was determined to stay and care for William. Gently, she asked if her presence was bothersome. Like a devoted wife, she kindly tucked the blanket back over him, but William, ungrateful, suddenly kicked it off and sat up angrily. He shouted, "Get out, all of you! I want peace." Feeling a sense of relief after venting without fear of resentment, William seemed momentarily content. Richard, noticing the escalating tension, again urged Emily to leave, but she resolutely insisted on staying by William's side. She continued to adjust the blanket and show her concern, but this only fueled his anger further. He sat up again and bellowed, "Get out, all of you!" Trying to defuse the situation, Richard pleaded with Emily, but her stubbornness made things increasingly awkward. Finally, under Richard's persuasion, Emily reluctantly stood up and left the room, glancing back with hesitation. As her footsteps faded, William peeked out from under the blanket. Seeing the empty room, he tossed the blanket aside and sat up, as joyful as a child. However, his happiness was short-lived as he realized he had revealed his vulnerability. Quickly, he pulled the blanket over his head and resumed snoring. Emily returned, asking if William was thirsty. She moved gently toward the bed, but William simply turned his back to her, refusing to respond. Richard suggested she leave some water for him and come back later. With an understanding smile and a charming glance at Richard, Emily agreed. Once the hotel room was quiet again, William sprang up like a fish flipping out of water, but moments later, he dived back under the blanket, pretending to sleep. At that moment, a hotel staff member in uniform entered, asking if William needed anything. He shook his head, declined, and then locked the door, feeling comforted and at ease. After taking a hot shower, wrapping himself in a towel, and lying on the bed in a relaxed state, William drifted off to sleep. Yet, in the middle of his slumber, he felt something soft touch his body. The sensation left him puzzled and immobilized. Suspecting someone was playing tricks on him, he grew angry at the thought of a potential scheme. Unsure how much time had passed, William tried to regain clarity by practicing breathing exercises. A bright light seemed to pierce through his closed eyes, but he couldn't open them. He remained focused on his breathing to maintain his composure. Despite the surrounding noises, he couldn't distinguish them clearly, concentrating solely on his practice. Eventually, William jolted awake, opened his eyes, and realized he was no longer in a daze. Feeling fully recovered, he examined himself and confirmed he was unharmed. A wave of relief washed over him as he realized he had escaped unscathed from the strange situation. He speculated it might have been a ploy by a local woman and resolved to uncover the truth about what had transpired. William Miller quickly got dressed and ran out of the living room, sensing that the situation was not right when he realized the visitors were not good people. Late at night, he felt frustrated as it wasn't easy to catch those who had prepared so thoroughly. The following afternoon, William Miller was awakened by the sound of the phone ringing. Upon answering, he realized it was Jack Turner, who invited him to dinner. William Miller was suspicious of Jack Turner's intentions but still agreed to go along with his sister, Rose Miles, who had also received an invitation from Jack Turner. While doing laundry, Rose Miles ran into the room to ask William Miller for his opinion on whether she should go. William Miller advised her to go, thinking it might be a big party, and assured her he would protect her. Rose Miles then happily agreed and called Jack Turner back to confirm. In the evening, William Miller arrived at the beach bar and saw Emily Grant and Richard Lee sitting inside. Richard Lee greeted William Miller warmly and gifted him a Rolex watch as a gesture of friendship. William Miller accepted the watch but refused to keep it, not wanting to accept gifts from others. When William Miller and Richard Lee returned to their seats, they saw Rose Miles and Emily Grant chatting happily, with no signs of jealousy or hostility as before. Jack Turner, the bar owner, announced that dinner would be served and that he wanted to show everyone a beautiful landscape photo. He appeared smug, as though he had some scheme involving William Miller. Meanwhile, William Miller sat calmly, showing no signs of concern. As Rose Miles and Emily Grant vied to see the photo, Jack Turner became embarrassed upon realizing the photo was nothing special and was mocked by William Miller. Additionally, Jack Turner grew angry with his two subordinates, James Fox and John Fox, for failing to execute his plan. They discussed why William Miller had escaped their scheme and suspected he might have figured something out. Jack Turner felt frustrated and unsure of what to do next, while James Fox and John Fox remained loyal to him. Emily Grant and Richard Lee got back together, leaving William Miller to maintain only a casual friendship with her. In this context, Jack Turner disagreed with John Fox's opinion that William Miller should keep his distance from Emily Grant. Jack Turner argued that such rules no longer applied in modern times, but John Fox emphasized that William Miller could pose a significant obstacle to Jack Turner, as he had a good relationship with Emily Grant and could approach her more easily. Despite praising John Fox's intelligence, Jack Turner felt frustrated and uneasy about William Miller. He summoned a woman, leading to an unpleasant scene between Jack Turner and the woman, showcasing his rudeness and cruelty. Jack Turner's inappropriate actions revealed his malicious nature. Meanwhile, William Miller received a distress call from Emily Grant, prompting him to rush to save her. On the way, he sensed something was amiss when he noticed strange figures on the street. Upon arrival, he found Emily Grant being pinned down by a group of men as she struggled and cried for help. Without hesitation, William Miller charged in to rescue her, but the gang quickly turned their attack on him. Despite his efforts to fight back, their strength overwhelmed him. He was beaten severely, enduring blows from sticks, and though he tried to stand up to protect Emily Grant, he ultimately collapsed unconscious beside her. Emily Grant was devastated to see William Miller injured. She blamed herself for calling him, feeling as though she had caused his harm. While waiting for news about William Miller's condition, she was consumed with worry and anguish, tears streaming down her face as she reflected on what had happened. When William Miller was taken to the hospital, Emily Grant stood anxiously outside the emergency room. Finally, the doctor emerged and announced that William Miller had sustained severe injuries, including multiple traumas to his back, neck, and shoulders, as well as a broken right arm. The doctor warned that he might end up in a vegetative state, leaving Emily Grant in shock and desperation as she pleaded with the doctor to save him. Emily Grant's deep concern and affection for William Miller were evident as she clasped the doctor's hand and begged for help. The doctor promised to do his best, but his words felt like the sky was falling for her. She realized the gravity of the situation and began to feel helpless, unable to do anything to aid him. Hearing the doctor's explanation that William Miller might become vegetative left Emily Grant stunned and worried. The attending doctor, around 40 years old, initially appeared courteous, but when he hugged her to offer comfort, he accidentally touched her chest, leading to an awkward moment between them. Emily Grant reacted strongly, but the doctor quickly explained that it was unintentional. Though flustered, she managed to stay composed. As the doctor elaborated on the vegetative state, Emily Grant felt heartbroken. He described it as a deep coma where the patient lacked consciousness but still maintained basic functions like breathing and heartbeat. He also mentioned that sustaining life in such a state was a contentious issue. Emily Grant researched more about the condition on her computer, gaining a deeper understanding of William Miller's state, which filled her with overwhelming emotions. She blamed herself and resolved to care for him for the rest of her life. After regaining her composure, Emily Grant entered the intensive care unit, where William Miller lay on a hospital bed surrounded by tubes and machines. Though there were no external wounds visible, he was on a ventilator and receiving fluids. Emily Grant felt somewhat reassured seeing his stable heartbeat, but her worry remained. Sitting beside William Miller, she held his hand and called his name fervently, as if trying to wake him from his deep slumber. At this moment, William Miller was in a strange dream, being chased by horsemen across a vast field. Despite his efforts to wake up, he couldn't open his eyes. Meanwhile, Emily Grant continued to hold his hand, her heart filled with hope. Exhausted but unwilling to leave his side, she eventually drifted off to sleep late at night, still clutching his hand tightly. Suddenly, William Miller's left hand trembled slightly, just enough for Emily Grant to notice. She woke up immediately, staring intently at his hand, hoping he was beginning to recover. However, his hand soon returned to its still state, leaving her feeling both anxious and apprehensive.